The following podcast is taken from a live broadcast on Inspire FM.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to another edition of Friday Night Live with me, Hafiz Sha'ban, this Friday evening on the 22nd of November 2019. It's corresponding to the 24th of Rabiul Awwal 1441, and as usual we are broadcasting live to Luton on 105.1 FM and to our sister stations nationally, Sheffield Link FM, Peterborough Salam, Derby, Nottingham, and wherever you are nationally via our Inspire FM app. And of course, as usual, we're also broadcasting live via Facebook. 01582 481 822 is the number here in the studio. 07779 481 822 is the number for your SMS, your social media messages, your WhatsApp messages, because I think you're going to need those numbers tonight. We've got a fantastic lineup, and I've got a studio full of some mashallah, very, very strong young gentlemen that I'm about to introduce. Right, so let me give you my lineup this evening, inshallah. So firstly, Jumatul Mubarak to everyone, all of our listeners this evening. A number of news stories that I've been covering over the last couple of days this week, inshallah ta'ala. So we might cover those later on in the second hour of the show, from 7 o'clock till 8 p.m. inshallah. We're going to be covering a story that we've covered previously, and that's about China and the mass detention of the Muslims in China, in the Uyghur, the Muslims. So we're going to be covering that at 7 p.m. inshallah. And we're also going to be covering the American position as it changes on the Israeli settlements, declaring them no longer illegal overnight. So we're going to find out what's been happening with the American attitude towards the Israeli settlements and now declaring them no longer illegal. But we're going to be covering that from 7 p.m. The first hour, from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m, we've kind of dedicated that to a very special story, very local here to Luton. Right, so we're going to be covering our own, very own local Luton zone Khabib. I've called him the Khabib of Luton. He may agree or may disagree, and you may agree or disagree. We want to hear from you. But anyway, that's what I've termed this brother, the local Khabib, right? So this is a story about Faisal Malik, man. I'm sure a lot of you will know Faisal Malik. Mashallah, he's a well-known local individual, but he's known for more than one talents. But his specialist talent that at the moment he's exhibiting in a fairly convincing ways is his MMA skills, mashallah, right? So we've got Faisal Malik in the studio with his team, right? He's an MMA fighter and he's recently been in action, right? So he's recently been in action last weekend, and we're going to be speaking to him live in the studio. If you tune in to Inspire FM Facebook, you can see us live in the studio. You can see the entire team live in the studio, inshallah ta'ala. If you want to put any questions to them, 01582 481 822. Any questions you want to put to them, feel free to do that. 01582 481 822. Any social media messages, right? 07779 481 822. 07779 481 822. Any social media messages, SMS, WhatsApp messages, send them through to me, inshallah ta'ala, and we'll try to cover them this evening. Right, so that's going to be our lineup. So without any further delay, we're going to go straight into our lead story, right? And we're going to go straight over to brother Faisal Malik, who's here in the studio, like I said, with his team, right? So let me introduce his team to you, to our listeners, and let me introduce you firstly to Faisal Malik. Assalamu alaikum, Faisal, and welcome to Inspire FM.
Welcome, Salam. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, well, it's great to have you in the studio finally, because I've been chasing you for weeks, haven't I? Tell us the story, man. What have you been doing for the last couple of weeks, man?
I've been training, that's why I couldn't come last time.
Yeah. You've been training, so you've been a busy man, mashallah, right?
Yeah.
So tell our listeners, man, what happened last weekend?
I won by TKO in the first round, and I won the UCMMA bantamweight title.
Right, mashallah. So you were in a competition last weekend.
Yeah.
Right. So we're going to discuss that in a bit more detail. But you won in the first round, yeah?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. So for first round victory for Faisal Malik, right? So I've equated you unofficially to Khabib, right? Obviously we got a bit more further to go, right?
Yeah, exactly. He's a different league.
He's in a different league.
Yeah.
We get that, but listen, we have to start locally, man. We have to start small, and then we have to kind of build up, isn't it?
Yeah, that's
but
right.
we're going to be discussing your story in a bit more detail, shortly, inshallah. But let's also introduce the team, man. So let's start from your right-hand side, right? On the mic 4, who we got on mic 4?
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Jawad.
Jawad.
I'm a friend of Faisal's.
Wa alaikum salam. Welcome to the studio, Jawad bhai. Okay, so what's your role in the team, man?
Basically just supporting Faisal the whole way, really.
Supporting, you're not one of the bodyguards, are you, bro?
No.
You can get away with one of the bodyguards, bro. It's just you're not wearing that security jacket, bro. That's
He's a head of Team Malik.
Head of Team Malik. That's the security, bro. There we go. And I tell you, we've already got messages coming in. So first, I'm going to test how popular you are today, right? I've dedicated an hour to you, right? And the production team said, "Are you sure you want an hour?" I said, "This guy's famous, man. This guy's local." So we want to cover a local story, and we want to see. I'm going to gauge how popular you are based on how many messages I get, and whether they're positive or negative. That's let's move on to on the right of Jawad. We got on mic 3.
Assalamu alaikum. My name's Imran. I'm a friend and a sparring partner of Faisal Malik.
Sparring partner.
Yeah, I'm his punch bag, basically. I'm his punch bag.
You're his punch bag, right? So something that I said off the record before we actually started was, Faisal Malik, he's still looking good, man. He's still looking handsome. And so are you, bro. So
what it is? He's put on, honestly, in 1 week, he's put on a lot of weight.
Yeah, well, heavy right now.
He's put a lot of weight on.
Yeah.
So, like, Faisal normally walks around about 75 kilos.
Yeah.
And you fought at, what, 61 kilos?
Yeah, that's right.
You fought at 61?
61. So a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't know that.
No, let's come on to that, right? And lastly, we've got on mic 2, introduce yourself, bro.
Assalamu alaikum, I'm Zishan. I'm Faisal's friend, and we just help him throughout training camp and fight days.
Alright, mashallah. Alright, fantastic. Okay, so that's the team, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters. That's the team that we've got here in the studio. Any questions, like I said, 01582 481822, 07779481822 is the number here in the studio. Inshallah, I've got plenty of my own questions for Faisal, but inshallah I want to get our listeners involved, and it doesn't have to be listeners from Luton, right? Any of the listeners from Nottingham, Sheffield, any of the Peterborough, Stevenage, any of the other towns that want to send in a message, send in any questions. We're not going to take any live challenges for against Faisal at the moment. I'm sure he's got his team that you need to go through, right? But we're happy to have any other questions, inshallah ta'ala. All right, Faisal. So tell me, bro. I mean, all right. So you won last weekend. Tell us. Tell people, I mean, a bit about your background, how long you've been doing this, what's the scene? I mean, mashallah, in terms of media coverage on your story, as I was saying to you just before we came live on the studio, I mean, I Google searched you and I thought, let me do a bit of research into Faisal Malik. Who is Faisal Malik? Of course, I mean, just for our listeners, I mean, I've seen you and I've known you in the past. I've seen you in the gyms. I've seen you at the Storm gym in the past. Seen you training, mashallah. A lot of brothers speak very positively. I mean, fantastic. I mean, the videos that I've seen is all great stuff. I'm obviously doing a lot of marketing for you, right? You can pay me later for all of that. I mean, the first article I saw from Luton today, right?
Yeah.
I thought, wow, man, they're covering it. But that's a previous...
Yeah, that was my debut.
And they said... let me read the article to you. A Luton fighter, Faisal Malik, exploded onto the pro MMA scene with a devastating win over Liam Johnson, at the 54. So, I mean... So this one was always also a first round victory, man.
Yeah,
what's happening, man? You're getting used to these first round victories, bro.
Train hard, innit? Fight easy.
Yeah. Subhanallah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, give us a bit of background in terms of when you started trading and when did you decide to go MMA scene? What were the influencing factors? Give us a bit of background, man.
I started training about 17 years old.
Yeah.
Started off with a bit of kickboxing and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah.
And then I did that for about 3-4 years.
Mm.
And then from there I did on wrestling as well. I was doing everything separate, but it was nothing to like a competitive level. In my head I wanted to compete, but I knew I had to get my skill set to a certain level before I go into the scene. And that's exactly what I did. Then I turned pro about 2 years ago when I was about 23, and then I got injured during the time and I was out for a year.
Yeah.
And then that's it. I came back this year, 4 wins, 4 first round finishes.
Mashallah. So you started off at 17, yeah?
Yeah.
And
I did boxing as a kid and that.
Yeah.
But it was nothing like to a competitive level.
Yeah.
It was just like, you know, like, you want to go to the gym, hit the bag, and stuff like that. Yeah.
And then you became pro at 23.
Yeah.
I gotta let you into a secret, bro. When I was young, man, I always wanted to be Jean-Claude, man.
Oh yes.
Jean-Claude Van Damme. In my days, my days, you know, you probably think, who the hell is Jean-Claude?
No, I know that.
You know what I'm saying, man? But you know what surprises me? 17, man. I thought you would have started a lot younger.
No. I came into this game late.
I was going to bring my younger son into the studio today, man. He's 6, right? I take him into Storm. He goes 3 times, man. And I say, mashallah, you know, you need to continue that, So, I mean, as long as you continue, that's the key thing. I mean, there's a lot of kids out there,
Yeah, 100%.
A lot of kids out from the community. They're training when they're young.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But you can't burn them out, though.
You can't burn them out.
Yeah, exactly, because there's a lot of things, you know, as a kid, you want to kind of enjoy your time growing up as well. You have to understand your kid as well, how he is. Yeah. Did you get it? I've got little brothers, little cousins and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I tried training them, but they're just not on it.
All right, so we're going to come on to the advice,
Yeah, that's fine.
But I want to talk about you first, man.
Yeah, that's
Tell me more about you, man.
So...
What makes you tick, bro?
Nah, bro, I'm a chill like guy. Ask these lot. I'm a laughing, chill like guy, but when that's it.
So Lutonian, man, originally from Kashmir? Or
that's it.
Originally from Kashmir. We're going to talk about that later, inshallah, mashallah. So you've been training since 17, turned pro 23. You're about 29 now, is it? So you turned pro about a year ago? Or
that's it. 2 years ago.
2 years ago. So you've been fighting professionally for the last 2 years, right? And what, 4 fights up until now?
Yeah, basically, I did my debut and then I got injured. Yeah, I was out for a year, and then this year, February, I came back. Yeah. And then I had 4 fights and 4 finishes first round.
You fought 4 fights this year?
3 fiits, sorry.
3 fights. That's quite a lot of fights for 1 year, right?
It's not. I wanted more.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Oh, bro, subhanAllah, man, you're quite hungry, huh? Oh, subhanAllah, man, excellent. I mean, okay, so tell us, I mean, you got a typical fight. Let's say last weekend you had this fight. Yeah. What's your typical training routine then in the run-up to a fight?
3 times a day.
Yeah.
It'll be some sort of grappling, some sort of striking, and some sort of strength and conditioning or running based or something like that,
yeah.
So I strike and I grapple every day.
Yeah.
And then one of the other sessions will either be a strength and conditioning workout or it'll be like a sprint, track workout, stuff like that. Yeah.
So how many hours is that a day then?
Oh, it varies, man. Every session is about 2 hours.
Yeah.
2 to 3 hours, So times that by 3. It's like a full day job, isn't it? You get it 24/7.
Wow, bro.
Yeah.
So, man, is that like a full-time job, Akhi, man?
Yeah.
Literally, man.
Yeah.
That's smart, subhanAllah. So fairly intense. I mean, by the way, team, man, if you want to jump in, guys, feel free to jump in.
Yeah. Ask these lot. I don't see these lot. When I go in a fight mode, I'll see them like on fight week. I'll say goodbye. I'll see you in about 12 weeks' time.
Seriously, so you just cut yourself off for 12 weeks?
It's amazing the change in character you see, because he's pretty chilled, he's relaxed, he's quiet, he laughs, jokes, but when it's fight time, he completely puts himself away, and he's in the cage, he's like a completely different animal. Don't know what happens to him.
No, you have to. There's a lot of mental. The mental game, you have to be strong as well. It's not just physically, but you're mentally.
But you're sparring with him, aren't you?
I feel the strength.
He's been with me
I've been with him since the start.
That's good.
I've been with him since the start. So training camp, we try and do training camps together. So at least, you know what I mean. So we have to push him to his max. He still hasn't been tested yet. Just remember, there's 4 professional fights he's had. They've all ended in the first round. So he still hasn't been tested yet. Still hasn't been
under a minute.
I think I'll have to, I'll have to jump into the cage. Bro. I think I'll have to come out of retirement first. Sorry, bro. Subhanallah, man. No, sounds good, man. And what about what's the support been like from the family, man? I mean, your parents or
without them, I wouldn't be able to do it. To be honest with you, if it wasn't for my dad, there's no way I would have been done.
Bro, I thought your mom's gonna be worried, man. And
they're like, this is the last one. Don't do anymore. Don't do anymore. This is enough. But
now his family backing's a bit insane. It's not like when I was growing up, there's more be an accountant, be an engineer, be this, be that. But they'd be very supportive, which does help. It does help a lot.
Absolutely. I mean, especially if you have to do it full time, right?
Yeah, 100%.
It's quite intense, right?
Because when I fight, it's not like I'm only fighting. It's like my whole family prepares for it. Like, food's on time, clothes are washed, everything has to. Everyone's on it. Then.
And even the diet, bro. I mean,
exactly.
You know, I mean, paranthas and roti pani, man.
Everything's weighed out.
That kind of stuff's not going to help you, is it?
Exactly. But that's what motivates me, though. Because I see that when I go to battle, it's not just me. There's a whole line of everyone. Even my mates. Do you get it? They all sacrifice their time and everything. Do you get it? For me to be on that stage.
Wow, man. Wow. Sounds good, man. Sounds quite intense, man. I'm going to go back to my listeners first, and I'm going to ask my listeners, any questions. I'm getting a couple of messages. I'm just waiting for them to pop up, right? So we're going to put some of those questions to you. But we are speaking to Lutonian Faisal Malik, who is a professional MMA fighter. Last weekend had his fourth fight. So far it's 4 victories out of 4, all finishing in the first round. So we're discussing his background, what got him into MMA, what's the source of motivation for him, and we're gonna start moving on to in terms of what is the advice for the youngsters out there, what's the advice for a lot of the youth out there, because we know, and one of the questions I'm going to come on to, I've just coined your nickname as Khabib, right? So I'm obviously going to stretch it. I'm going to ask you what your nickname is, by the way. All the fighters have a nickname, right? But since the last couple of years, when Khabib's come onto the scene, we've seen a lot of Islam being associated with MMA, and Khabib's really, become this role model for a lot of people, right? And I remember what was it, about 2 years ago when he had that fight with Conor McGregor? It's about 2 years ago now. So subhanallah, you know what I mean. Conor McGregor, of course, got the fight. It's all of this publicity for the individual he is. I was going to use a more derogatory term, but I won't use that because we're live on radio, right? Yeah. And then Khabib, he hit the storm with his personality, his persona, his Islam, his commitment, and he became a personality. Before that, people really didn't know much of Khabib, at least I didn't, right? Or a lot of people wouldn't have, unless you're connected with the MMA scene, right? Yeah, that's right. And then a lot of people start looking at him from that perspective, right? So yourself, Faisal, right? You're a Lutonian. You're probably known far more well known than I am in Luton. I'm not a Lutonian at all, right? So tell me what's been the impact, right, of your kind of short MMA career and your training, etc., in the community and amongst family and friends?
What do you mean? Like, explain that. Say that again. How is your family you've described, your friends, how have they responded to you? Some of the youth that perhaps know you, know your brother, and they know that Faisal's into the MMA scene, training, etc. What kind of response have you seen from the community? Yeah, it's positive, man. Everyone shows me love, like wherever I go. Yeah. And everyone's just like buzzing, really, to be honest.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. We have to translate these terms to buzzing. Yeah.
Everyone's basically. I can see that.
Buzzing might mean something else in Luton. Yeah. It means something else in Nottingham, and those guys might be calling and saying, "Astaghfirullah, bro." What do you mean buzzing?
Everyone's everyone's. I can see that. When they see an Asian guy like doing well, everyone's getting happy in it. You get it? Yeah. Everyone's getting behind it.
No, there's a lot of love, man.
Yeah, you get it. Everyone's showing me love. There's no negativity.
Yeah. And are they approaching you for autographs? Yeah, or we're still a few more fights away from that. Yeah? Because next time we call you, man, I have to tell our listeners, man. We have to chase you for weeks, bro, to get.
I was training, bro. I was training hard.
We have to bribe him to get on the radio, man. And next time, man, you might want to charge us a fee to come on.
No. We talk about the afterwards. Actually, we talk about the afterwards.
P Malik, heads are all here. Contact
them. There you go, bro. See what I'm saying, man?
I think he's had a really, really big effect in terms of us lot growing up. Yeah. In general, when we were growing up, a lot of people were focusing on cricket and football. Yeah. So, and then sort of a little way down the line, it was boxing. Yeah. But for someone to be as dedicated and take it as seriously as Faisal has done for you. For MMA, and he sort of combined all the different things that he done from his teenage years to now. I think he's really has just much like you were talking about Khabib earlier. He propelled MMA for those that didn't really know a lot about him.
Correct. Yeah.
Or didn't know about the sport, whereas those who did, they know a lot of fighters that they can name off the top of their head. So I think he's done for Luton. Definitely what Khabib done on a world scale, so he's on his way there, isn't he?
He's on his way. As they say, small steps, bro.
Yeah, exactly.
Get one fight at a time. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so okay, we've got about 7 or 8 minutes before we go into commercial break. End of the first half an hour, right? So all right. So in terms of let's talk about the youth work. Let's talk about the youth, right? Let's talk about we know a lot of youth up to no good, right? A lot of our youth up to criminality, up to all sorts of stuff, right? So there's multiple ways of trying to attract them and get them off the streets, get them away from those bad influences. Yeah. And for a lot of our youth, the mosque is not the first point of call, bro. They're running away from the masjid, right? But that's the point, right? But when you want to give them boxing, or you want to give them some martial arts, you want to give them some fitness, MMA, this is the kind of almost language that they can connect to.
Yeah, of course.
You see what I'm saying,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, that's right.
So that's my point. So when you're doing that, you're doing training, and then you've taken it pro, right? So and now you're being successful.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. At least initially, right. So that definitely has a lot of positive connotations, like you said, in the community, right?
Yeah, of course.
And that's a brilliant opportunity. Then engage with these guys. Yeah. Get them involved, etc., etc. Are you finding that opportunity, or is it early, or what's?
It's a bit of both. Like, as in, youngsters do come. Don't get me wrong. Get messages all the time. Oh, can you train me? Can you do this? Can you do that?
Yeah.
But obviously, I'm still fighting myself. Do you get it? So it's hard to balance it all out. But I try my best to basically support the youth as much as I can. But to be honest, I'm just starting though. This is just a start.
Correct. It's early days.
Exactly.
Yeah, but now you're in between fights, inshallah. So hopefully you're not training morning and evening.
Yeah.
So a bit better that time,
of course.
Plow back into
I
that
train
community.
a few youngsters.
Yeah.
As much as I can, basically. But
there's nowadays gyms out there for these youngsters. Yeah. There's a gym just up the road from me called Ultimate Athlete. Trains youngsters.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what I mean? So these places are available now. It wasn't when we were younger. None of these places were available.
Traveling all up and down the UK.
We had to me and Faisal literally used to drive hours to get to a half decent gym. Now there's one just up the road from us, so we're loving it. And it's available for these kids. Again, it's at affordable price as well. Again, it's parents that want to invest in their kids. It can be done. It can be done. It is difficult, but you can spend the money if you want to invest in these kids. Like you said, you take your little one to Storm, I believe. Again, it's pure investment. Do you know what I mean? He's letting his energy out in the right way. Do you know what I mean? Instead on the streets where they get involved in gangs and things like that. That's where everything goes all over the place.
Exactly. No, I agree. There's a lot more facilities than there were previously. Gyms everywhere at the moment, except.
Well, one thing you said, about the mosque not being the first thing for the kids. Answer. Why is that? Should I tell you why? Because look at the legends of Islam that we have, but no one talks about them. Umar ibn Khattab, Khalid bin Walid. No one talks about these people. You get it? All everyone talks about in mosques is how to read namaz. Don't put your hand this way. Put your hand that way. You get it? You need to engage with the youth. You get it? Inspire them. How we were inspired. Wrestling's a sunnah. Do you understand? You get it? So when I wrestle, I'm getting gassed. I'm getting excited. Like the Prophet used to do this. Do you get it? This is amazing. Do you get what I'm saying?
You know the point that I was going to make to you. In fact, people do talk about Khalid bin Walid, but not maybe in the context that you should be discussing with the youth. I mean, with the youth
to inspire them to do well.
Exactly. So those are the kind of things that you want to highlight, right?
Exactly.
That wrestling, that you gave the example of the Prophet ﷺ, grappling and wrestling. I mean, for me, bro, I used to find grappling and wrestling boring.
Exactly.
Do you know what I'm saying? Always boring, right? But again, like I say, I mean, the perception around grappling and wrestling over the last couple of years, I think, has significantly changed. And I think Habib, again, for me, is the guy who's changed it a lot, because he's shown you, bro, you can take people out, and you can be, even from a self-defense perspective, it doesn't have to be stand-up fighting all the time. And the reality is, you don't have stand-up fighting in any real-life situation all the time, bro. There's going to be something on the floor. So it's a good art to learn. And as you said, if you do it with the niyyah that, look, this is also sunnah.
Yeah, exactly.
It turns everything that you're doing into ibadah.
100%.
Yeah, fantastic. The brother next to you is really quiet, man, so I'm going to wake him up.
I'm just leaving you lot to it.
He's security. He's just checking if things are going well. He's checking if things are going well.
That's right.
Things are going all right so far. He's smiling, so it's a good thing. It's when he doesn't smile, you should be worried.
No, that's good. What other pieces of advice would you give any of you guys, man, to the youth out there, right? Some of our youth are into academia, alhamdulillah. Some of them are into Islam, bit of deen, deen. Some of them are into up to no good. I mean, what's the general advice? Is this a kind of a lifestyle for everyone and anyone? Is it something that you should be doing, parcel of your daily routine or weekly routine? How would you how would you generally approach it? Especially in the environment that we're living in today, right? I mean, it's not easy environment. It's not easy society. Self-defense, generally confidence. All of these are elements, right? That I mean, even for my son, right? He's mashallah 16, but physically he's quite big. He's outside, right? So he goes to London every day in school, right? The fact that he's been training for the last couple of years, right? That as a parent, it gives me a reassurance.
Yes,
that, my son has got a bit more confidence.
Exactly. That's one thing.
He's carrying himself, etc.
Discipline, confidence. These things are a must. You need that. And
you get that through interacting and training and you
get humbled as well.
You get
when you get smacked up in the face for the first time.
Use a different word, bro. You get intimidated sometimes when you go to these places, bro.
Yeah, actually, it depends on the person.
It does depend on the person. But again, for the youngsters, go for it. Sorry, go on. I'm just saying for the youngsters, it does depend because it's not an easy sport to get into.
Yeah, exactly.
It's tough. It is tough. Like things like wrestling, it sounds easy, but when you do it, it's tough. So it's all about whether they enjoy it or not. You don't want to force them into something they don't enjoy. If they enjoy education, just to push them. Do you know what I mean? So it does depend on what they enjoy as well. You can't force them to something they don't like.
I think the best piece of advice would be to just make use of the facilities around them, because there's a lot more, like we spoke about gyms and stuff. We've got a community centre here. If they go into these places, you don't know what you're good at until you've tried it, right? And people learn to be disciplined or more focused depending on their age range.
Agreed. All right, we're going to go into a commercial break, guys. 26 minutes is already over. I told you no time.
You don't realise.
So we're going to come back. We're going to go away for a couple of minutes, and we're going to come back inshallah ta'ala, and then we'll continue our conversation. Now, I want to also discuss, some of the dangers associated with MMA, right? And some of the controversies surrounding MMA. Let's discuss those aspects too. I want to continue with some of our advice to our youth, and then we'll discuss some of the other kind of initiatives and community work that you're involved in, right? So, listeners, this is Friday Night Live, and you're with me, Hafiz Sha'ban, on the 105.1 FM, broadcasting live from Luton. And as I was saying earlier, we've got a fantastic team in the studio, and it's Team Faisal Malik. And you want to know what they've been up to, then tune in and join the show, inshallah. 01582481822. We're still waiting for our first questions to come through. So first I'm going to ask you to send out that message again, bro. And we're going to be back in 4 minutes, man. I want the first question from your friend. Until then, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
You're listening to an Inspire FM podcast, making available our popular programs from our daily broadcast on Inspire FM.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Friday Night Live with me, Hafiz Sha'ban, on Inspire FM 105.1 FM. Every Friday 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. we are beaming to the good people of Luton, Sheffield, Nottingham, Derby, Peterborough and the surrounding areas, of course, via Inspire FM app and our sister stations nationally. We've got a great roundup and a lineup in the studio here with Team Malik, Team Faisal Malik, right? Local Luton MMA fighter, 4 out of 100% successful track record so far, right? And we want to hear some questions from any friends and foes. I'm going to open it up now to your enemies, Faisal, bro, because if the friends don't message in, I want to hear from the enemies, right? So let's open it up. Good or bad, SMS, WhatsApp, 01582481822. I want to hear someone speak live to us in the studio, man. We've got the team, man. I'm sure Team Faisal, Malik can take it, right? And then any social media messages, 07779 481822, 07779 481822 for SMS, WhatsApp messages, and I promise I will read them and take them, inshallah, in our conversation. So we've got another about 25 minutes. We're going to be discussing this subject matter, and then we're going to move on to some of the other political stories around China and what's some of the leak papers that have come out of China, and how China's been treating its Muslim minority in the Zhejiang province of China. We're going to be discussing that, and also we're going to be discussing American attitudes towards the so-called illegal settlements suddenly have become legal, right? So we're going to be discussing that from 7 p.m. onwards. But until then, we're going to be with Faisal Malik and the team and our listeners, right? So I've got a press report here that I'm just going to read out. I mean, it's quite interesting read. UKFightsite.com. UC MMA 61 highlights. The undefeated Faisal Malik improved to 4-0 and took home his first UC MMA super fight title with a dominating performance against Ben Corcoran. Malik immediately took Corcoran down and uploaded some brutal ground and pound until the referee stepped in. Right. Now, I got to be honest to you, Faisal, right? I mean, I saw the videos. Unfortunately, I couldn't make your fight, so, that's cool. Right? And also, you didn't give me no free tickets, bro. So that was another reason for not coming.
That's what Team Malik.
Security, man. I'm going to come under security in a minute, right? So I'm hoping that I'm going to be an approved part of the team now.
Exactly.
Media coverage for you going forward, bro. Excellent, right? So those are the two reasons I didn't come to the fight. But no, I was in Leeds, yeah?
Yeah.
Now, I saw the videos that came out of that fight, man. Bro, I mean, you were giving that guy, poor guy, a beating on the ground. And I tell you, right, I have to be really honest with you. You know, I remember I said to you back in the days I wanted to be Jean-Claude Van Damme. Right?
Yeah.
Remember in those days, bro? You see, when I was a lot younger, kickboxing was in, right?
Yeah, of course.
Jackie Chan, Jean-Claude, etc. Kickboxing was the thing, right?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe Thai boxing, and that's I've always loved that. And I've never really associated that kind of brutality with those sports, right? With MMA, you know, right from the beginning, bro, I just can't see blood, man. You know, I'm a bit of a weakling, but I can't see blood, man. And that stuff is nasty stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so what's your views on that, right? Because a lot of my listeners, right, and if you hold this opinion, I want to hear it, man. There's no point, you know, holding that opinion in silence. SMS, WhatsApp, ringing, right? A lot of my listeners will be saying, bro, all that pounding to the face, man, it's not on.
Oh yeah,
it's not on, bro. Faisal, how do you respond to that, bro?
So
all the other stuff, grappling and what have you. You know, getting him to into submission and getting him to submit. Great, wrestling is part of wrestling, isn't it?
Yeah, of course.
That's all legit. That's all cool, right?
Yeah.
Right, but people will take objection to. Maybe hitting in the face and bro, the way you knocked that guy out. No, well, you didn't knock him out, but the way you won, it was pound, wasn't it?
Yeah, of course.
You can use a bit of street language if you want, bro.
Nah, it's alright. Basically, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, hitting to the face is haram, stuff like that. Yeah, but obviously, this is just my opinion. Yeah, if that's so, what I'm trying to say is basically that it's under rules to get it.
Yeah.
He come prepared, I come prepared.
Yeah.
There's judges, there's everything in place, there's referee there.
Yeah.
Like, it's not to the point where I'm absolutely...
you're not going to kill him.
Exactly. Yeah. And also, and I'm not, to call it... like, he knows that he's getting hit.
Yeah.
And I know that I'm in to get hit. Like, if I'm doing it like an innocent person, then I can see, that's wrong. Right. But if my man is coming to me for me to a fight...
So this is a competitive sport.
Yeah, it's competitive. Do you get it? It's a different... It's a different understanding for me anyway. Like, I'm not hitting him innocently. Do you get it? This is a fair ground where it's like, no, like, basically you're coming to war, you're fighting. Do you get it? Yeah, so that's my...
Because you have doctors and stuff.
Yeah, everything's on standby.
Hang on, security sport. I heard you say something. I'm going to interrupt, bro. We need to go live to security. Right, bro, man. Jawad or Jawad? Jawad, bro. Head of security, bro.
Sir Jawad.
No, but you have doctors and stuff like that. So if like a fighter, let's say, gets an injury that's kind of severe or something.
Yeah, you sign a contract, innit?
Yeah, it'll get stopped and stuff like that. So you'd always have doctors in the corner.
Yeah.
The referee to stop it.
I personally don't think it's that dangerous. Personally, I've been.
Let me share a story with you. Yeah, this is from this week. Yeah, I don't know if you saw that, Faisal, right?
Yeah, I saw it.
Did you see that story? Yeah. So a Muslim MMA fighter, tragically, she died from injuries after losing her bout. Right, this is 19th of November. This is a few days ago.
That's right. I heard about
so it's a female sister, right? So she, in fact, it was here in the UK,
it was
Southampton,
wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So she's 26-year-old, was fighting, and she suffered, a brain injury, and then suddenly, passed away.
Was that MMA? I think that was K1, wasn't it?
It says during the K1 lightweight contest on Saturday night.
Yes, K1. Yeah.
Things like that is different because MMA, if you get rocked and if you drop, the referee will stop it if he thinks you're not able to punch back. They stop it. With K1 and boxing, things like that, if you do get knocked down, a referee picks you back up. Your brain's all over the place, your head's all over the place, you still get punched and kicked to the head. That's probably a lot more dangerous than MMA.
But this, like, as Muslim, death here is going to come whenever it is. You can prevent injuries, but you can't prevent death.
Correct.
You get it? If her time was to die, she's gone. I can die the next fight. I can take a head kick and I can die. But however, I see what you're saying though. It's brutal, blah blah blah. Yeah, that's with anything in life though. Like, you see, the MMA is nothing compared to what some people go through on a day-to-day basis. But also, I know your questions are going towards. You can prevent injuries. We get blood tests, we get brain scans, we get MRI scans before we fight, after we fight, everything. That's all there. But at the end of the day, the question about death, you can't run from death. Do you get it?
Agreed. I think it's tragic because she passed away, but regardless of whether she's Muslim or non-Muslim,
exactly.
you wouldn't want to wish that.
That's right.
But in any sport that you do, even if you're not doing sport, I think any sport you do, if we're talking about sport, any sport you do is dangerous.
Yeah, exactly. There is an element of danger.
I was just going to say, we've been doing MMA for 10 years. I've been playing football for about 10 years. I've been injured more in football than I have in MMA.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what I mean? It's as simple as that.
I get you, but I mean the point is, I mean even in terms of the physical combat sports, right?
Yeah.
Probably, I mean I haven't got the statistics in front of me, but if I had the statistics, I would probably think that boxing is probably right at the top of it, because that sport has probably been a lot longer, and there's been a lot more fatalities in the boxing ring than MMA. But it's just the way I've perceived MMA for a long time, bro.
Yeah, it looks like that.
I've always been away from it, man.
It does look like that. When you see all that blood,
you don't see ground and pound and elbows and all that.
I have a quick question for you then. So,
bro, I'm supposed to be asking the question.
I know you said about blood and stuff, because this might be relevant to some of the.
This is not on, bro. You're asking me questions. Sorry, go on.
You said about blood and sort of how some people might have a view on punching people in the face and stuff, and how UFCs always seem to be more brutal of a sport than any others. Do they feel the same way about boxing? Do you feel the same way about boxing?
No,
boxing is it's a sport that a lot more Asians are more interacted with and watch and participate in. Do they feel the same way about that?
Maybe I think it's a good question.
It's a lack of education on the sport. Do you get it? Like you look at grappling, you think it's boring automatically. You look at ground and pound, you think it's barbaric and it's brutal. But actually, when you look at the techniques involved, you'd be like, actually, it's not that bad.
It's technical.
Maybe I was going to say, maybe it's the way they market, MMA, right, as a kind of a ruthless sport. But then boxing's like that. I mean, look at some of these boxers, man. All in the in the build-ups and all the publicity and what they do for publicity and all the crazy stuff that they do for publicity. So
it's all marketing, like you said.
It's all marketing. Boxing's not too far away from it, right? But it's, I mean, I guess it's just the persona, and it's just the kind of PR that they put around that it's perceived like that. But the other thing I was going to say is boxing's been around, at least I think, right?
For ages,
it's been around for ages, right? So it's probably people have become a lot desensitized to it, right? And so that's another reason for it, possibly anyway. But anyway, so that's some of the points, right?
Yeah.
But like I said, I mean, the reality is here. Yeah, and it's here, and you've got huge, individuals now in that support. It's got a huge following, and as I said, last couple of years with the likes of Habib, and it's just right becoming, in there.
Yeah,
I mean, would that something? I guess that could probably negatively, impact an individual. I mean, if you were very conscious, I mean, of I don't want to hit this guy in the face. I want to take him down some other way. I want to get him into lock him down into submission. That could seriously compromise your game plan, right? Seriously compromise. So you can't really think like that, can you?
As in, what do you mean?
So, you know what, I'm going to try to avoid hitting this guy in the face.
Oh, nah. When it's a fight, isn't it?
It's a fight, isn't it, bro? You can't think like that.
You know, the thing is,
tap him, bro.
There are some organisations out there that don't do face shots.
There
are some organisations.
It's not organisation, it's the rule set.
It's a rule set, sorry.
Amateur C class is basically no headshots.
Yeah.
But what's that? Is that boxing or is that...
MMA.
But you just can't punch to the face. A lot of the Muslim Brothers in London, there's an organisation in London, what's it called again?
I don't know.
But they basically, it's just you can kick, not to the head. You can't punch to the head. Takedowns.
Nothing to the head.
Nothing to the head, basically. So there are organisations out there that do that.
That's interesting. There you go. So if you want a more of a halal version of martial arts, halal version of it, right? Not to say that this is, I'm saying this is haram, but I'm saying there's opinions out there where people are saying, look, there's an issue here, right, etc., etc. Anyway, we had to raise that, so we brought that to kind of balance the debate. All right, so let's go back to some of the other issues that we were discussing earlier, right? So we were discussing in terms of the advice to the youth, and you were mentioning in terms of what is a good approach. You shouldn't wear out the kids when they're young. You should get them involved, etc. Right? But just remain kind of consistent in your training. What because normally another thing, I tell you what I found is something else, right? Is that the younger kids, you can get them going and they get a bit self-motivated. My youngest son, 5 years old, right? Yeah. So when I used to take him first, bro, he used to run.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
He was scared, bro. And he would not go. And like I said to you, some gyms are very intimidating.
Yeah, of course.
Right? Some gyms, when you go there, are really intimidating because it depends on the instructor. Yeah, of course. Right? It depends on the kids around you. They can be intimidating, right? And then it's very, very difficult to send a kid who's probably a bit timid, of course, probably a bit shy. You're trying to open him up and you send him to a gym which is very intimidating. That just makes it double hard, right? 100%. But thankfully my son, maybe it was a bit of that, I have to be honest, bit of that, but subhanAllah, he got into it. Now he goes 3 times a week, right? Exactly. So he's regular. Now first that point, how do we overcome this intimidating element, right? So we'll pick that up. And then the second element is, right, then what I find is that the kids, right, as they get older, 12, 13, maybe they're still in there because there's a bit of parental pressure, right? Let's go, we need to continue that. But when they turn 14, 15, then they switch off, bro.
Exactly.
Right?
They burn out.
No, but okay, but I'll tell you what my question to you is. My question is, if you've built someone up since 6, 7, and he's consistently gone all the way to 14 and 15 is the time now when you want to really put the cherry on the cake.
Exactly.
It's not the time to retire.
Yeah, exactly.
You want to retire, retire when you're 20, 21, when you've got the cherry on the cake, right? Yeah. So 15, 16, you don't have to be competitive. If you don't want to go competition and you don't want to be fighting, whether it's friendlies or not friendlies, right? Yeah. Continue it until at least you're like 20, 21, right? Yeah. To really master the art before just packing up your bag. So 2 questions for you. How do you overcome the intimidating element? We might put that to security. Security. You should tell us a bit more about that. And then the second question is, right, is this issue of, the kids who are 15 and 16 and then suddenly they find, I can't be bothered anymore. Yeah. What do you say to them, right?
Basically, the second question, I'll do that first. Basically, this is much of my opinion, is that, like, as I said, you burn them out. What happens is when they experience a bit of freedom of going out, they're like, you know what, I miss this. So I want to pack in training for a little while and I want to chill. I've seen it. I train youngsters. Yeah. Do you get it? The killers all the way up until 15, but then after that you don't see them again. Yeah. But I think it's basically that because they're always constantly training, they don't experience like just chilling out for a little while. Yeah. So when they do chill out, they're like, you know what, I don't even want to go back to the gym again. Yeah. I prefer this chilling out lifestyle. Yeah, do you get it? Because it becomes a chore. That's what I meant from before. Like, you can't make it a chore. You got to make it enjoyable. Yeah, if they don't want to go training, give them a week off. Yeah, don't make it. You have to go. You have to go. Because training's not easy. Yeah, do you get it? Plus, actually, no, it depends on the parents as well, blah, blah, blah. If you're going mosque, then going training, it's a busy day. Starting 7 o'clock in the morning from school, it's quite tiring. Yeah. So it has to be balanced. Simple as that. So kind of lighten it up, be a bit more relaxed, but ensure that they continue the training. I mean, let's also link. I mean, my son is a good example. He's sitting outside in the offices here in Inspire FM, right, doing his voluntary work, right. So he's been at a time when he used to go to Stone 4 times a week, right. But now he's got exam period, so I've lightened it up. Only the weekends, right. And then plus some of the other stuff, right. And sometimes he says, Dad, I can't be bothered. Yeah. And then sometimes I'll say, all right, cool, no worries. But you don't want to make that into a habit too, because too much, exactly.
Because the other side of it is is the fitness side of it.
Yeah, of course.
Keeping fit, keeping active. Right. Not becoming obese, right? Because we have got problems, bro. Roti every day. Sitting at home. No training. Bit of football. And just PlayStation all day, and studying whatever is not going to really build athletes, is it?
Yeah, 100%.
And then you talked about examples earlier, Khalid bin Walid, Umar ibn Khattab. Umar ibn Khattab, bro. Apart from the fact that physically, subhanallah, he was very, very intimidating, and he was huge, right? But then you got the likes of Khalid bin Walid, and then you got the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, wrestlers. Yeah. Now that better than I know, for wrestling, bro, you need to have a solid structure.
Yeah, exactly.
Otherwise, you can't be done. A few words on that then, bro. In terms of training, fitness for the youth.
It has to be balanced. That's it is, and also it also depends on the individual. Yeah. Like, do you get it? Do you get what I'm saying? You have to like for example, if I've got kids, and I'm like, I want to train them up because I trained. But if my kid's path might be completely something else, that doesn't mean that I'm going to be like, nah, well, you have to train. Nah, it's cool. If you want to do something different, do it. You get it? It's like you don't have to train. Like that's not the way I was. You don't have to train. Pick something and do it. Just do it good. You get it? Yeah.
But we would encourage the parents. There should be some physical activity, and especially physical. Combat training, martial arts, etc. This is all good for their confidence, good for self-defense, etc., etc. So we're going to jump on to security. But before we move on to the head of security, right? We're just going to remind our listeners, right? You got about 9 minutes and counting before we conclude this conversation. So any final questions or any messages? 01582 481 822. Right, 07779 481 You know what? There is a question here. I've not looked at. I've not seen it. Sorry. There's a question here. Question for Faisal Malik. Right. When is the next fight? And are my cage side tickets ready? Muhammad SFC. Bro.
Yes.
Bro, before you answer that, man, are my cage side tickets ready, bro?
Yes.
I'm on top of that list now. Alright, so we'll
in March,
we
inshallah.
had a question, man. I didn't realise. Sorry about that. All right, so when's the next fight, Akhi?
March, inshallah.
March, yeah?
Yeah.
All right, so you got a few months break, yeah?
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. All right, so the next fight is in March. And are your side cage tickets ready, bro? If the money's ready, your tickets are ready, I guess.
They're all ready, bro. It's all ready. The VIP crew is certified. It's just like straight away get tickets. They're gone straight away.
Yeah. Fantastic. All right. So we're gonna come to brother Jawad, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's it.
Jawad, man. All right. So Jawad, intimidating, right? So some of these gym places can be intimidating. They can be a bit tough places, bro. Right?
Yeah.
And I used to live out in Dubai for good 5-6 years, and there was a MMA scene out in Dubai.
Yeah, that's right.
Big scene out in Dubai at the moment. Mm-hmm. So I used to train out there with some of the Russian brothers. Wow, subhanallah. I tell you, before Khabib, I met these Russian fighters. I used to be out in Dubai in 2007.
Yeah.
And I used to go to the Contender, gyms out there. The Russians, man, I have not found any stronger. And these guys want big guys.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And I used to say they were physically so strong, bro. And it's because of the fact that they wrestle when they're very, very young.
Yeah,
wrestling, I'm telling you, wrestling for me has taken a 360. I used to find it so boring.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? But my attitudes of wrestling have completely changed.
Yeah.
But when I used to go to that gym in Dubai, it was intimidating, bro, because these guys were out to kill me. Yeah, I'm not lying. Yeah. So I used to go to that gym. I used to think, it took me weeks, right? Yeah. Just to these guys, for some of these guys to look in the eye and say hi to you. They don't want to say hi to you, but then what the hell, who's this guy, new kid on the block, right? So you have to almost try to get an acceptance.
You have to earn your stripes. You have to earn your stripes.
Well, if that's what it's called, you need to tell me, bro. You need to.
That's how it is. That's how it is. Yeah.
Is that what it is? But I thought I had the security was going to tell me that. But you're telling me instead. Tell me what's the score, bro? Because in Storm, we've been going to Storm for years, right? So I guess I know the guys there, and you get into your comfort zone. But some of these gyms, bro, what's the score, man? You have to what? Earn your what?
It's like earning your stripes, isn't it? You got to show that you're worthy.
Right.
Yeah. Do you get it?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're about it.
Yeah.
And if you're not about it, you get found out.
Yeah, no, but if I take you get found out, that sounds weird.
It's true, though, isn't it? That's how it is.
You push me away. Some of the parents are listening to this show. Yeah, they want to take the bachara bacha to the gym. Yeah.
No, I take him to this classes, build him up.
What?
Yeah, he'll be fine.
They want to take the bachara bacha to the gym. Yeah, and you're telling me you're going to earn your stripes. Yeah, and they think, what does that mean? Do they have their stripes on instructions? Right, and then you're saying, you're gonna, So what's the word of advice for those bache, man, to build a bit of
I think he
confidence
touched on it earlier where he said confidence. Even when a kid starts school, irrespective of their age or when they go into a new place, they're a bit. They're on the back foot.
It's
a new environment, it's new people.
Yes.
But over time they build that confidence.
Yes.
The same thing will happen in the gym.
Yeah, exactly.
As long as they go in and they've got a good balance and they're not forced to do anything they don't want to do.
That's the big
confidence
factor.
will build up and you see that confidence.
All right. Okay, it's fantastic. All right, we've got about 6 minutes and I know there's a last area that I want to touch upon. I mean, that's a good point that the brother raised. It was Imran, right? Zishan, right? That's a good point. Good analogy to new schools. You're absolutely right. And there's another point about the parents, right? It's not too much, oh mara putra, oh mara beta, he's got scratch over here, he's got scratch over there.
It's like Faisal was a proper ladla.
Was he, Faisal, was he a ladla? He didn't tell us that.
He kept that quiet. He's the youngest in the family.
I told him to tell you something about himself, man. He didn't tell
me that. He didn't say the ladla. No. You had to leave that. You had to leave that out. No. You just have reputation, man. It was going so well, and you ruined his reputation.
You best make sure all your fights are very carefully selected. So you
mentioned the nickname. You mentioned the nickname. Nickname was Ladla.
Right? No wonder he didn't answer that question. He never answered that question. Yeah, I said, "What's your nickname?"
There you go.
What is your nickname, bro? Fight a nickname. Every fighter has a nickname.
Sorry?
Don't make it up, yeah? What do you mean, sorry?
Every fighter has a nickname.
I'm getting questions, that's why.
You got the questions here. Let's bring the questions up, man. We've got about 5 minutes left. What's your fighter nickname? Have you got
I don't have one, but manager calls me the Lion of Kashmir.
The Lion of Kashmir. Yeah. That's a good one because we're about to come on to Kashmir. Yeah. I've seen a lot of your team Team Faisal marketing material. There's something about Kashmir. What does it say?
It's just free Kashmir, yeah.
Free Kashmir.
To raise awareness, yeah.
Yeah. So you'll be going into these fights with this free Kashmir
hold the flag,
logo and then also the flag. That's right. So tell me about that. So you said earlier that you're from Kashmir, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Which part of Kashmir are you from then?
Kotli.
Don't tell me. I was going to guess that one, man. Big up to all the Kotli posse, man, which is the whole of Luton, basically. Yeah, exactly. That's a big posse, man.
Yeah.
So do all the Kotli lot turn up to all these fights then?
Yeah.
Seriously, yeah. So how have you been raising? How have you been involved in the Kashmir awareness? So obviously, the Kashmir has been under this, almost a complete sanctions from an Indian perspective. A lot of human rights violations there. Not a lot of news coming out of what's been happening in Kashmir.
Yeah.
What have you been doing in terms of that?
The main
that area?
goal for me is just to raise awareness, man.
Right.
For now.
Yeah.
To get then take it to
because a lot of people don't know what's going on.
Exactly.
So purely just having free Kashmir on your top has given us this opportunity to talk about it.
My mates were telling me that because the flag is different, people are like, what flag is that? Why is he coming out with that flag? And then they were educating on the reason why he's coming out with the flag, where it's from, and stuff like that to get it.
That's very
good. Just raises awareness to get it, what's going on.
Me and Faisal were on holiday recently as well in Kashmir, and we just saw the way people live.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's difficult anyway, bringing up a child there or even living there in certain areas. And then we know a lot more in the Western media and stuff because we have access to a lot more things to obtain knowledge on what's going on there than the guys out there. So we've had a few trips there. He's also sort of donated his own money towards causes.
Alhamdulillah.
So there's quite a bit that he has been doing, but I think it's more less of a political stance and more of a humanitarian one.
Human conscience.
Yeah, absolutely, because these are innocent kids, children and families that are being torn apart, so it's more of that humanitarian aspect.
Fantastic. All right, very good. So we've got another message here. Brother Asif, I don't know if you know Brother Asif. He's Assalamu alaikum, great show. Muslims should learn self-defense, and especially for sisters. Right,
okay,
that's good. That's good message. Jazakallah khair for our listeners, and we've only got a minute to go for the end of the show, mashallah. So it's been lovely, just enough time to wrap up things and just say Jazakallah khair for all of you guys for coming in.
Thank you for having us.
And fantastic victory, mashallah.
Thank you.
And the next fight's in March, so we look forward to that, inshallah. And let's see if we can be there live media coverage. Inspire.
I'll get you, bro.
On the sides of the fight. Let's see if that's possible.
Yeah, that is possible.
But anyway, we will definitely stay in touch and we'll cover that, inshallah, in terms of training, and that it'll be good to keep posted. And the whole idea today was to promote some local talent. So it's local talent, mashallah. So we need to promote and we need to support it. Jazakallah khair, guys. Any final words before we go? Faisal's up.
No, that's it, bro.
Jazakallah to team Faisal Malik, and Jazakallah to the team Faisal Kotli, man. for all supporting. Big up Kotli. All right. Listen, that is Faisal Malik and team. Jazakallah guys for coming in. That was team Faisal Malik, inshallah, here in the studio, and we were discussing his fight last weekend. 4 out of 4 so far, successful victory. And the bigger story that we were covering is self-defense, staying fit, and really making sure our children are fit, confident, and picking up these kind of self-defense skills that are so much needed in today's society that we live in. Inshallah, we're going to go into a commercial break. When we come back, we're going to be discussing China and America and Palestine. Don't go away. Until then, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum, this is Atif Nawaz. Listen to Inspire FM shows in your time by heading over to inspirefm.org or listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Friday Night Live with me, Hafiz Sha'ban. This Friday evening, 22nd of November 2019. Very, very cold evening. We are broadcasting live from Luton on 105.1 FM. 01582 481822. 01582 481822 is the number here in the studio. 0779 481822 is the number for your social media messages, for your SMS and WhatsApp messages. To make any comments or any questions or any suggestions on either the first story, the first hour that we were discussing MMA and we were discussing self-defense, and we had Team Faisal Malik in the studio, or if there's any questions for our next 2 stories that we're going to be covering in this hour. And we're going to start off with the next story, which is on China and the treatment of China of its Uyghur Muslims. And we've been covering this story previously on Inspire FM on Friday Night Live, and you may remember, just to give you a quick recap in terms of how China was exposed in terms of organizing this mass detention, right? Mass detention centers. You can call, think of them as these concentration camps. Think of them as these massive, prisons or detention camps, right? That you kind of see, when you're looking at footage of World War One, World War Two, or any other world, or any other kind of international conflict and wars, and you have all of these masses, thousands. In fact, there were reports even suggesting millions of Muslims of this Uyghur province, right, Xinjiang province, that were incarcerated and kind of prisoned in these detention camps, where China was, of course, from a Chinese perspective, they've always claimed that these Muslims, firstly, they didn't exist. Later, they said, yep, they do exist, but they're very kind of focused camps where we're de-radicalizing, these so-called terrorists and so on and so forth. And then later, more and more information has emerged in terms of Chinese brutality, Chinese tyranny, the kind of draconian measures that China has been imposing upon the Muslims, the Uyghur Muslims in China. And most recently, there's been leaked documents, right, in the last couple of days, last couple of days, there's been leaked documents which has now exposed in detail this mass detention of the Muslims. What more evidence do we need, right? What more evidence do we need? The question that I've got this evening is, what more evidence do we need, right? What new elements or aspects of the detention and the torture of these Muslims does it bring to light, and what do we need to do, or what needs to happen to get the world's attention and the world to do something about it, right? So I'm going to be speaking to two experts. We're going to be speaking to Mehmet Tohti, who's the co-founder of the World Uyghur Congress, prominent Uyghur Canadian human rights activist, right? So it's a bit of a long title there, but I'm hoping that you'll be able to clarify, Mehmet, exactly. And then we've also got Farkat Jawdat, a Uyghur American activist and software engineer. His mother and other relatives were sent to China's internment camps in Xinjiang in 2018, right? So it's very, very personal and primary evidences that we're listening to on the radio station this evening. So firstly, Mehmet and Farkat, welcome to Friday Night Live, and thank you very much for joining us. We've just lost, we've just lost Farkat, so we've got Mehmet. Mehmet, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you very much for joining us. Assalamu alaikum, and thank you very much for joining us, Mehmet.
Wa alaikum assalam. Thanks for having me.
Right, so Mehmet, tell me more about these leaked documents, right, that have exposed China. I mean, China's been in denial for many years, right? Then slowly it started to acknowledge what it's doing in this province, right? But still, it's tried to, you kind of sanitize what it's actually doing. But what I've been reading from in terms of some of the commentary on these 400 pages of internal Chinese documents is stuff that I would have read after the First World War and the Second World War, and how the prisoners of war were treated. And this is China treating its own people or fellow people in a very, very dehumanizing way. Tell us more about it, Mehmet.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum for the listeners. First of all, I felt to express my gratitude to your program. You are trying to shed a light on one of the atrocities that taken place for the Uyghur Muslims in China, in East Turkestan. It is important to cover the story. In terms of your questions, just a couple days ago, New York Times exposed the 403 pages leaked document from top Chinese insiders, Chinese officials, who knows what has been discussed from the top, from Xi Jinping to all level of Chinese Communist Party officials, about how to detain millions of Uyghur Muslims, and after detention, how to pursue the Chinese narrative of propaganda, and how to pursue that kind of narrative or Chinese propaganda to abroad for the criticism and for the opposition coming out. So it's very detailed documents. At the same time, this is the direct linkage for the Chinese President Xi Jinping, because incarceration of more than 4 million Uyghur Muslims, that incarceration order came directly from Chinese president. And some of the words used is quite disturbing. No mercy at all. Arrest as many as possible. Yeah. Those are the words discussed and ordered by Chinese President Xi Jinping, and now including my 78 years old mother and the 37 other my relatives, including more than 4 million Uyghur Muslims, are in concentration camp in today, just for being Muslims. Practicing Muslims.
Okay, brother.
Self-identifying Muslims.
Okay, so Brother Mehmet, all right. So let me just recap that for my listeners, right? For my listeners, right, who are listening across the UK, right? Maybe we have covered this story previously, but I just want to make it very clear for my listeners, right? For my listeners, what we are discussing is how the Chinese government, and remember China is in bed with Pakistan at the moment with a lot of these economic projects that are happening in Pakistan, between Pakistan and China, and then Pakistan seems to be keeping a very tight lips, right, when it comes to China and its treatment of the Uyghur Muslims. And you're mentioning 4 million, up to 4 million Muslims of the Xinjiang province, which is the East Turkmenistan area of China, have been locked up.
Turkestan.
East what? Turkestan, right? Have been locked up. Have been locked up by the Chinese government, right, in these virtual camps, right? And on what basis? On the basis that I've got a comment here from this 400 pages of internal Chinese documents, right? The guided recommended increasingly firm replies telling this. Okay, it tells them that the people that have been put into these camps have been put into those camps because they have been infected by the virus of Islamic radicalism, and they must be quarantined and cured. Imagine those words, right, being used to describe your family members who have been put into these camps, these prisons, because they've been infected by a virus known as Islam. That is what is that is what is coming out of these leaked documents, and that's what Brother Mehmet is exposing. That is now surfaced, right? But Brother Mehmet, right? So you're giving us your first-hand experience. Let me go to Farkat, where we keep losing Farkat Jawdat, right? Who's also an Uyghur, and he's an American activist. Farkat, can you hear me? Assalamu alaikum. Right, so we seem to be losing Farkat every time we try to connect him. But Mehmet, let's continue. So Mehmet, you were also sharing personal experiences, right? I mean, this information that's been leaked out via these internal documents, right? We've known that for a number of years. Has it surfaced any new information apart from the fact that the Chinese, right, we would have known this already, that the Chinese are involved right at the top, right? Nothing happens in a communist state without the authority and the approval right from the top. So we knew that is happening from the top, but now it's been exposed. What's been the reaction from the Chinese government? Have you seen any response from the Chinese official government?
Chinese government is still in a stage of denial.
Right.
And a couple of days ago, Chinese ambassador in UK, Liu Xiaobin, he flatly denied the New York Times exposure and said that this is fabrication, this is lie. There is no any base of this so-called leaked document, despite all documents exposed on New York Times is the direct speeches and the political orders of the Chinese President Xi Jinping. Actually, New York Times did not edit, did not add, or did not omit anything. The New York Times published whatever the documents the Chinese government was circulating internally. And those are first-hand documents from Chinese government. And there is no any additional comment made by the New York Times or any other sources. Despite the originality of the documents, Chinese government is still denying and even accusing that those so-called documents are flatly baseless and fabrication.
Right. Okay. So we're still trying to get through to another Uyghur Muslim, Farkat. As soon as Farkat, you can hear me. If you can hear me, please do let me know. Right. And just speak to us. Farkat, can you hear me now? Assalamu alaikum, Farkat. All right, so we can't get through to Farkat. It's all right, I'll speak to Mehmet. It's fine. We'll continue to speak to Mehmet. Mehmet, all right. So we're still getting denial from China, right? So China at the moment, I guess it's under. I would say is quite significant pressure in Hong Kong. There's a huge amounts of disturbances ongoing in Hong Kong for a very long period of time. Now this has been exposed in an American press, in Western media. And you're saying China is still flatly denying that. Do you expect, the communist state of China to change its policies at all in any way or shape or form because of the pressure that's building up, Mehmet? And what are you expecting from, the social, the political pressure and the raising of awareness that we're engaged in? What do you really expect, right, from the Chinese government, realistically?
If we build up the pressure and there's the reasonable hope that China would change, it is a brutality, draconian policy to the Uyghur Muslims. Unfortunately, there have been some pressure recently from the Western governments spearheaded by the United States, Canada, Australia, and some other countries. But unfortunately, most of the Muslim countries are rallying behind China and supporting the Chinese persecution of Muslims. And just Pakistan and Egypt and Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates and so other Muslim countries, including some Latin American countries and African countries, because they are hoping to gain some kind of economic incentives from China as they are partnering with the Chinese 21st Century Marshall Plan called Belt and Road Initiative. And basically China is buying out those Muslim countries with money, and those Muslim countries are supporting Chinese repression of Uyghurs just to gain some economic benefit. And China is emboldened because of the Muslim countries' support. And so, in order to stop Chinese madness, incarcerating more than 4 million Uyghur Muslims just because they are Muslim, we have to speak up loudly to those Muslim countries to uphold their own moral obligation to protect Muslims in China.
Excellent. All right. So I think that's a very, very good point for our listeners. And unfortunately, it comes back down to that question again, doesn't it? Muslim governments, Muslim leaders being the ones who are the furthest away from actually... firstly, they're the ones who are capable of doing a lot, but they are the furthest away from actually doing anything constructive, anything to actually help the case of the Uyghur Muslims, right? Because they're in direct contact with the Chinese government. They're interacting with the Chinese government politically, economically, financially, but yet this doesn't even seem to be on the agenda because of the economic interests at stake with China. So I mean, part of this campaign then, Brother Mehmet, is it also then to put pressure on these Muslim governments, especially governments like Pakistan, and some of the other governments that border, Iran, right, and have China, and have a lot of dealings with China. I mean, surely they are the ones that should be are the biggest culprits. They should be really ensuring that that this agenda is raised within those kind of officials and those governments to put pressure on them and say, look, Pakistan, Muslim nation, why can't you take a stance, a political stance or a conscious stance, right? On the side of these people who have been oppressed and imprisoned for no other reason than La ilaha illallah.
And today, the Uyghurs abroad, especially living in Western countries, they launched a video campaign, basically outlining the cry of the Uyghurs. The Chinese government is forcing the Uyghurs to denounce your religious belief as a Muslim or live in concentration camp as long as you change your religious belief. That's the campaign Chinese government is using all state power and expanding every household of Uyghurs. And we need to, we try to approach the Muslim countries. We try to book an appointment with their representatives at the United Nations just to give them the right information. Those Muslim countries are still denying to have access to receive information about the facts about the real situation of Uyghurs in East Turkestan under Chinese rule. Yeah. So Muslim countries basically, with the term is currently quite popular, quid pro quo, with the money they receive from China or expected money they're about to receive from China, just selling out the Muslims and our beloved religion of Islam. Wow. So it has to be changed because this is not only our moral obligation as a human. It is the order from Almighty Allah.
Yeah.
Because those people in concentration camps just because they are Muslim. And those people in concentration camps just because they made a pilgrimage to Hajj in Mecca, or contributed to build a mosque, or they simply keep the Holy Quran at home. So I mean, not only our obligation.
So brother Mehmet, I just want to recap for my listeners. So what you're in essence saying, that the Chinese government has created these huge camps, and the message to the people in those camps is you stay in those camps until you give up Islam. Right? I want my listeners to be very, very clear and listen to that message. You stay in those camps. So they're separating brother, sister, mother, father. And this article, if you haven't read it, you need to read this article by the New York Times. And what is the information that is leaked? Separating people. Students are coming back from being away from home. Imagine you've gone to Edinburgh, you've gone to London, you've gone to Yorkshire, you've gone somewhere away from Luton to study, and you come back home for your vacation and you find no mom, no father, no brother, and no sister. The house is empty. And the people who meet you are plain-clothed officers, and they tell you, welcome back, Muhammad, right? Your mom and your dad and your brother and sisters have all gone off to concentration camps. Don't worry about them. As long as you don't say anything, as long as you leave your religion, don't worry about your fees. We'll pay your fees. Be happy. We'll give you a good living. But all of your family are in these camps, and they will stay in those camps until they change their deen. That is what is happening in China to those Muslims. And that is incredible, right? That is incredible.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've read this report. And it's absolutely horrific. Like I said to you, this is like I am reading something from the First World War. Right, and you know what really surprises me, Mehmet, right, is these so-called ambassadors of human rights, right? Because I'm not even talking. Okay, there's the Muslim element when we've discussed that, but there's the human rights element. There's the humanity element, right? There's an element of conscience here, right? Where are the people of conscience? Tell me about, the human rights organizations, the Amnesty. I remember Amnesty did a report some time back, and some of these other organizations. Have they picked up on this report? Have they put any additional pressure? Have they put any further press releases and some statements? What's the other kind of activity that's happening, Mehmet, to put the pressure on and to raise this awareness and expose China?
There are a number of reports issued by human rights organizations, including Chinese human rights organizations. And unfortunately, after the headquarters moved to London for Amnesty International, they used to be headquartered in London, England. Now Amnesty International is under huge pressure because
who is Mehmet?
Under Chinese jurisdiction.
Who is it?
The Amnesty International's headquarters a couple of years ago moved from London, England to Hong Kong, China.
All right.
And there, the Amnesty International's headquarters is under Chinese jurisdiction officially. Right. Therefore, Human Rights Watch is quite active. And Amnesty International also, Amnesty International Canada branch or US branch, they are quite active. But because of now the Amnesty International headquarters located in Hong Kong under Chinese jurisdiction, they could not even raise their voice as strongly as possible as we have seen before. But Human Rights Watch, they are doing their best, and there is no any voice coming out from Muslim human rights organization. And there are even Chinese human rights defenders living in exile or some other, even within the China, they are now showing us some support. And remember, the leaker of this New York Times the article or a documentation is Chinese, top-level Chinese officials, because he could not stand for the atrocity that taken place unfolding under the watchful eyes of humanity. And so that gentleman revealed this information just with the note saying that as architect of this human atrocity, President Xi Jinping should not escape from the punishment of the world, because this man is responsible for this atrocity.
Right.
For that reason, he leaked this document.
Right.
Despite evidence was clear.
Right.
Despite Chinese Communist Party and Xi Jinping was caught at the crime scene. Unfortunately, we have not seen any condemnation from most of the countries, especially from Islamic Cooperation Organization or member states of this organization. There are 57 Islamic countries under that umbrella. No one dare to raise their voice, just to condemn, even criticize the Chinese treatment of Muslims.
I mean, the point here is, right, Mehmet, right? Let me play the devil's advocate. I mean, is China playing an argument like America does, like Britain does, and like a lot of other countries do around the world now, that, you know, they are tackling this problem of radicalization, or they are tackling this problem of extremism? Is there any legitimacy to any potential claim by China that they are addressing only the problem of radicalism or extremism? Is there any truth to that, or is there a case for China to argue that?
We have to see what is the definition of radicalism or extremism. For example, if you grow a beard, if it is a sign of extremism or radicalization, all Muslims around the world are radical. And if it's a praying at home or a public space or a mosque, visiting mosque or making pilgrimage to Saudi Arabia or keeping religious books at home, if these are the signs of extremism, then there is no one left, right, on this planet Earth who are not the radicals. And so Chinese definition of radicalism means, or extremism means, if you believe the religion. And because remember, Chinese government officially declared that Islam is mental illness. Islam is a virus. It needs to be eradicated. So if you keep a Holy Quran at home, you are radical. If you grow beard, or if you are a woman and if you wear a headscarf, you are radical. And if you ask your children, do not consume alcohol, you are radical. And if you ask your children, do not smoke, you are radical.
Right, brother Mehmet,
consume pork, you are radical.
Okay, so brother Mehmet, you got 20 seconds. You know, and the whole of the UK and you know, potentially internationally, people are listening to you. What is your message to the listeners?
And now, that never happened again. The slogan of worldwide community after the Second World War is happening right now. Right before the eyes of international community. So I urge everyone to stand up, to stop Chinese madness, and we should not buy the Chinese propaganda. If Chinese government is sincere enough, if we have a solid evidence, we should open up those concentration camps for all international observers or human rights defenders or impartial investigation. We should allow that. Otherwise, Chinese government, whatever they are saying, it is just fabrication and a lie. We should not believe in that propaganda. Okay,
we're going to go into a commercial break. Brother Mehmet Toti, thank you very much for really raising the public awareness on the case of these 400 pages that were leaked, exposing China's ongoing activity on the Xinjiang province. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much. All right, listeners, we're going to go into a commercial break. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. Until then, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
You're listening to an Inspire FM podcast, making available our popular programs from our daily broadcast on Inspire FM.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Friday Night Live with me, Hafiz Sha'ban, on this Friday the 22nd of November 2019. It is now 19:30. So we have about 25 minutes of the show remaining this evening. SubhanAllah, it's been a very interesting and an enjoyable evening. 01582 481822 is the number here in the studio. 07779 481822. 07779 481822 is the number for your social media messages. And of course, we are broadcasting live from Luton and also across our sister stations nationally. Now, I know some of you have messaged me from Nottingham, sometimes previously from Jimmy from Nottingham, and Shahid from Sheffield and some of the other surrounding cities. You know what? Send a message whilst we're live on radio. I'll get your messages on air. Try to send in some comments. It's always good to hear from your comments from some of these cities tuning in and listening to our show, inshallah ta'ala. So don't be shy. Don't be shy, and it always adds value to the show. It always adds value to the discussion. And you know what? I prefer actually, I mean, it might sound strange to you, but I actually prefer to do less of the talking, allow you, the listeners, to do more of the talking, and allow you to lead the conversation, lead the argument. If you want to debate and you want to argue and you want to tell me that something is wrong, then you can't tell me if you're silent, right? You can only tell me if you're going to express your opinion, make your opinion heard, and pick up the phone, right? So same goes to, if you've got any suggestions, any thoughts, we want to hear them, right? So we have been discussing, the case of China and the treatment of China with regards to the Uyghur Muslims in the Xinjiang province, and that was quite alarming. That was very, very alarming. We've seen this happening across the world, right? We've seen this in in China. We've seen this in Myanmar and to the Rohingya Muslims. We're seeing that in Kashmir, and there's been references to Modi, and there's been references to Benjamin Netanyahu, and the likes of these coming together, sharing ideas, sharing tactics, how to suppress your people in Kashmir. Right, and now we're seeing this report coming out of China, and some of the stuff is horrific. Quite literally, it's horrific, right? And part of the report that we were discussing are references that these plans will be extended, to other parts of China. Other parts of China in terms of restrictions on Islam. And we've already said that these are the kind of tactics that are being used in Kashmir, right? The longer you remain silent, the longer these individuals have the green light to continue with their policies, irrespective of human right violation, irrespective of any conscience, irrespective of the ethnic minorities that have existed there for generations and generations and generations. And it's people like me, people like you, our listeners, who have to get involved, get your voices heard, and say oppression is oppression, whoever the people are oppressing and whoever the people that are being oppressed, right? So it's a very important point. If you want to get your thoughts across, 01582 481822 0779 481822 for your SMS and WhatsApp messages. I'll tell you what, we're going to move on to another show, and unfortunately, like I say, a lot of the times on this show, we go from a negative story to another negative story, and I do apologize for that. The idea of the show isn't to be very negative, but that's almost the reality nowadays of current affairs, unfortunately, and the world that we're living in. Anyway, the story that we're going to move on to, final story for this evening, is it's a very strange story, actually. It's a very strange story. The US says, right now, I want you to listen to this. I want my listeners to listen to this before we speak to the experts. America says that the Israeli settlements, right? The Israeli settlements these are the settlements, right? That the Israelis built in the occupied territory, the West Bank occupied territory, right? So this is territory that they gained after the 1967, Middle East wars, if I remember correctly, right? So these are settlements and communities that were established by Israel on land that they occupied after the war, 1967, etc. From the Palestinians, from the Palestinians, and they occupied that land. And then what they did is they made that part and parcel of their own nation, in effect, by getting migrants, getting their own citizens to go and settle in those areas and build them homes, infrastructure for their own citizens. And for decades, since the 1960s, these territories, these settlements, have always been classified as illegal settlements. America that has historically considered these settlements also as illegal, right? Okay, has suddenly, in a matter of days, right? It may have been discussed for a longer time in the backgrounds, but the U.S. Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, said that the status of the West Bank, okay, for the Israelis and Palestinians is there to negotiate, but he said is no longer going to view them as inconsistent with international law, and they're therefore no longer going to be illegal. Wow, America can do that on its own, unilaterally, without any consultation or discussion. That is news to me. We're going to be discussing with an expert who's going to shed a bit more light on it than I am, Mr. Ahmed Ben Chemsi, hopefully I've said the surname correctly, who's the Communications and Advocacy Director, Middle East and North Africa. Ahmed, assalamu alaikum, and welcome, good evening, welcome to Friday Night Live, and thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Wa alaikum salam, thank you for having me.
Thank you. Ahmed, did I get your surname correct?
Yes, you did.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So Ahmed, why don't you shed light on this news story? Because this is another classical example of America and its policy under Trump.
Well, it's good that you mentioned America, because not all of America agrees on that. Yesterday, 106 members of the Congress sent a letter to Secretary Pompeo expressing their strong disagreement with the State Department's determination that Israeli settlements are not illegal under international law. So this is for America. I mean, maybe the executive branch took that step, but the Congress disagrees. Also, the UN also expressed its strong disagreement with that position. The United Nations Human Rights Office has said a couple of days ago, right after that statement was made, that Israeli settlements in occupied Palestinian territory remain illegal, despite the U.S. saying whatever it wants, actually. Now, the settlements are wrong, clearly, both from the international law standpoint and from international human rights law standpoint. Let's start with international law.
So but just before that, Ahmed, just before that, just to clarify, both myself and yourself know very well that the United Nations can continue to say whatever it likes, right? And it has been saying for the last 50 years. Right, and Israel knows very well that as long as America and the American administration is on its side, quite frankly, who cares what the United Nations is saying? Right, so the fact that America says it, it's the green light, right? Not that it's stop those settlements in the first place, right? It's continue with those Israeli illegal settlements, for the last, for the last, under the current administration as well as the previous administration. But my point is, American giving it the green light, it just legitimizes it, and it doesn't, quite frankly, they don't care about the United Nations or any other organization. Isn't that the case?
Well, exactly. But as you mentioned, the United States government has been saying that settlements were illegal for the past decades. It didn't stop the Israeli government from continuing to build them. So we're talking on a matter of principle position here. And the principle position is that from an international humanitarian law standpoint, this is a violation. Let me be a little more specific, if you don't mind. The settlements, they violate Article 49 of the Fourth Geneva Convention, aka the laws of war, which govern occupied territories. And this Article 49 says the following: the occupying power shall not deport or transfer parts of its own civilian population into the territory it occupies. This is exactly what the Israeli government have been doing. They have occupied the West Bank and the Palestinian occupied territories, and then they have transferred their own population. Now, it's not just the Fourth Geneva Convention that prevents that, but in 2004, the International Court of Justice, citing the Fourth Geneva Convention, affirmed that, and I'm quoting them, the Israeli settlements in the occupied Palestinian territory have been established in breach of international law. And let me conclude the international law aspect with by saying that under the Rome Statute, the transfer of civilians of an occupying power into occupied territory is not just a violation, it is a war crime. And that is the exact legal expression to qualify the settlement. Furthermore, settlements depend on Israeli confiscation of land and resources that rightfully belong to Palestine.
All right, so
this means that Israel's confiscation.
I'll let you finish. Go on, Ahmed.
I mean that Israel's confiscation of Palestinian land and other resources come in violation of the Hague Regulation. Not to be too technical, the Hague Regulation, what do they say?
Exactly.
They say that private property cannot be
consumed.
Exactly. And the Fourth Geneva Convention prohibits the destruction of private property unless absolutely necessary for military purposes, which the settlements are not. Civilians live in there.
I mean, a lot of my listeners, Ahmed, are going to be listening to that, and they're going to be thinking, surprise, surprise. I mean, are we surprised? The Israelis go in, and there may be an element of resistance from a member of the family, but they go and they bulldoze the whole family, the family home down, right? They'll go and bulldoze the neighbor's home down, right? So I mean, where's that? In conformity to international law or in violation of international law, right? They might be throwing. We know the injustices and the political, the military stance of Israel. We know. People know that for decades, and that's the point. These institutions simply don't work in holding back, such aggressors that people, a lot of people would say. And in this particular case, they don't give justice to the ones who have, been the victims of justice. But let me ask you for a point of clarity here. When we're talking about the settlements, is that after the 1967 war or 1973, or is that from what is the time period that we're looking at?
After the occupation of the West Bank after the 1967 war, the settlements have started being built, and since then, this has been a violation of international law. Now, it's not just international law; there's also a human rights aspect to it. I mean, you've been talking about like balance of powers and about Israel continuing to do it despite it being a blatant violation, and that is true, unfortunately, and we can only deplore that. But however, we're talking on a principle standpoint here, and from a human rights perspective, the settlements are the beneficiaries of Israeli policies that harshly discriminate against Palestinians. So discrimination is also at stake here. The international human rights law has long established the basic principles of non-discrimination, which means that discrimination, what I mean, but let me use words for the layperson, if I might. Discrimination is where laws, policies, or practices treat persons in similar situations, here Israelis and Palestinians, differently, due to among other criteria, race or ethnic background or religion. This is exactly the situation we are here in. The prohibition against racial discrimination is considered one of the most basic in international rights law. So what happens in those settlements? While Israel maintains, and by the way, Israel says that its human rights obligations do not extend to the occupied territories, which is absolutely wrong. The International Court of Justice found that it was not the case. So technically, there is a two-track legal system in the West Bank.
Yes, exactly.
It applies different sets of laws to the people depending on their national and ethnic background. To the Palestinians, there's a combination of Jordanian law and Israeli Israeli military orders. And to Israeli citizens, it applies the Israeli law.
So Ahmed,
this is clearly a discrimination.
Ahmed, can I ask you, where are you actually based?
I am right now talking to you from Casablanca, Morocco.
Morocco. Okay, Casablanca, Morocco. I just wanted to know, just for my information, so I can see where you're coming from. All right, so I've got a comment here. Right, Chief Palestinian negotiator Saab Erekat said that the U.S. decision was a risk to global stability, security, and peace, and said it threatened to replace international law with the law of the jungle. Surprise, surprise, Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the policy shift rights a historical wrong and called on other countries to do the same. Right? So we can see that very clear distinction between the two, right? Now, my point here is in terms of replacing international law with the law of the jungle. I mean, is this a shift of the American policy, which is, almost, we're gonna take this issue of the Palestinian and Israeli conflict and just bulldoze our way through this with what we want to do. First, we made Jerusalem into the capital of Israel in terms of addressing this East Jerusalem kind of issue, sensitive issue. Now we're talking about the settlements. Well, we're gonna press ahead and we're just gonna recognize these settlements, and then it's just gonna be the case of the return of the Palestinian people, and that's the only issue that we're gonna negotiate. And you know what, we're just gonna bulldoze our way, and that's the way we're gonna resolve this issue. I mean, is that the way you're reading into this, Ahmed, or is there any other way of reading into this American policy towards the Arab-Israeli conflict, Ahmed?
Well, it is clear that since the Trump administration took over, the U.S. administration is much more blatant in conditional support to Israeli policies, even though they violate international law, which is the case here. However, as I said earlier, even the previous administrations, even if they condemned the settlements as what they are, which is a breach of international law, they didn't do anything really to stop the Israeli government from continuing to extend them. There was one attempt under the first Bush administration, if I'm not mistaken, that a U.S. aid to Israel was withdrawn for some time because settlements were built, but that aid was quickly restored. And even though the successive U.S. administrations have been paying lip service to the fact that Israel should stop violating international law, U.S. military aid has never stopped since then, and the settlements have continued only on expanding. So what we're seeing right now, unfortunately, is like how can I put it? It's like the administration the U.S. administration is straightforward about its intentions, rather than saying something and not following up on it. Now it's saying clearly that we don't care about international law. Well, that's not exactly what Secretary Pompeo said, but I mean, international law is clear. The UN says it. The European Union says it, or pretty much the rest of the world says it, except the U.S. administration. And even within the U.S., the Congress does not approve of that decision.
Yeah, I mean the point is, right, look, I'm just reading a quote from Pompeo, right? So, after careful studying all sides of the legal debate, Mr. Pompeo told reporters the United States has concluded that the establishment of Israeli civilian settlements in the West Bank is not, per se, inconsistent with international law, right? So, I mean, it's quite incredible. I mean, how can it not be inconsistent with international law when very clearly we've just articulated earlier how it's clearly in violation? And that's the point, I mean, here with the American position, right? I mean, I've got in the early, late 70s, Jimmy Carter administration, very clear, inconsistent with international law, illegal. And then you got, it's almost like each administration comes and it's got its own kind of slightly difference of attitude, but overall, considering it, illegal, right? With now Trump just giving almost the green light. But I tell you, the bigger issue for me here is, in addition to seeing American almost unilateralism and seeing how America is just dictating the agenda without any engagement, without discussion, it's the lack of confidence in all tools and institutions of international law. I mean, America is setting a precedent here and telling the world, quite frankly, we don't care about international law and these tools and institutions. Is there any, what the Palestinian spokesperson said, that is replacement of international law with the law of the jungle. I mean, that's exactly what we're heading down. I mean, otherwise, where do you go to seek justice, Ahmed?
Well, unfortunately, I don't have much to add to this. Yes, I agree with you. I don't understand either. Maybe that question should be asked to Secretary Pompeo, and it has probably been asked, and he probably dodged the answer because there's no right answer. It is a violation to international law, and he can say the opposite as much as he wants. That won't make it true. Yeah. So so you were asking about avenues of redress. There is one.
I'm asking for avenues of redress. I mean, today, Palestine is one issue. Earlier on the show, we were discussing the issue of the Chinese internment of, the Xinjiang and the Uyghur Muslims. Before we've discussed India and the issue of Kashmir. It seems that whenever there's an international crisis of human rights or violations involving a Muslim or a Muslim Muslim minority seems to be, predominantly the flavor of the day, then international law is very easily sidelined, right? And international law is referenced when the powers to be want it to be referenced, and it's a very convenient tool. You use it when you want to, and you put it on the sidelines, and you continue with business as usual when you want to. Where's the cause of readdress in such a political global context?
Well, I'll leave political interpretations to you if you don't mind. What I do is talk about human rights and human rights law and international justice, and from that angle,
but from that perspective, Ahmed, from that perspective, from a human rights perspective, from a justice international law perspective, right? Where do you go? I mean, which is the courts? Where are the courts, right, that can really put to account such atrocities, whether in China, whether in India, in Kashmir, or whether they're in Palestine by the Israeli government? Is there justice for the oppressed, or is there no concept of justice for the oppressed?
Well, you mentioned justice, so let me answer you with the International Criminal Court.
Yeah.
We have strongly supported Palestine's accession to the International Criminal Court in light of the seriousness of the abuses and the ongoing impunity that happens there. Now, we also believe that Israel should join the International Criminal Court. But, I mean, for now, Palestine is a member, and the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court should thoroughly scrutinize the issue of settlement, because it is within her mandate right now, as well as other crimes, by the way, committed in and from Palestine, regardless of the perpetrator. These include some crimes committed by the Palestinian Authority as well, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay, the mandate is there. It has a mandate. It should thoroughly scrutinize, because the abuses are serious. There's an ongoing preliminary exam, and so to start with, businesses should get out of settlement. So, yeah, I mean, that is one avenue, and it is worth exploring.
Yeah. All right, Ahmed, thank you very much for joining us this evening and shedding light on this very important topic. Thank you very much, and thank you for joining us on Friday Night Live.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, that was Ahmed Benchemsi joining me live from Morocco, and he was the political and Middle East correspondent, communications and advocacy director for Middle East and North Africa, and we were discussing American attitudes and how America says that the Israeli settlements are no longer illegal, right? And this is all these settlements, right? Let me just give you some facts. There's about 600,000, so just over 500,000 Israelis who live in about 140 settlements that have been built since Israel's occupation of the West Bank and East Jerusalem. So that's like, a foreign invader coming, taking over parts of Luton, right, Bury Park, and building up its own homes, in that occupied territory, with his own citizens, right? So hopefully, that's a bit of a high-level analogy, just to give you an analogy of what we're actually discussing in terms of the settlements, right? And this is in West Bank, East Jerusalem, Palestinian land that's been taken after those particular conflicts, and the Israelis have built their own settlements. They were considered illegal for many, many decades, but the American attitude at the moment is, hey, why are we talking about them as illegal? They are no longer illegal, right? And that's unfortunately about it for this evening on the Friday Night Live. I mean, we've had a number of stories where we've been discussing. I mean, we've discussed just before this. We were discussing the case of China and Chinese, attitudes and internment of its Uyghur Muslims in the Xinjiang province. I mean, that is absolutely horrific. Absolutely horrific. If you haven't seen the New York Times article, I really suggest you read it, because it's horrific in terms of the details it contains, and what is the attitude, and it, absolute no mercy, right, towards the detention of Muslims, and 4 million plus Muslims all locked up in these detention centers, families split apart. We've had so many people that we've interviewed on Friday Night Live with their family members all locked up away from loved ones. I mean, imagine Imagine if that happened to your family. And that's exactly probably what is and has been happening in Kashmir for a very long time. I think it calls out to all people of conscience to really get up and say, enough is enough. I mean, what is this? It's just replicating around the world, right? And also many thanks to Team Faisal Malik for the first hour on Friday Night Live when we were discussing MMA and the successful fight of Faisal Malik's 4th fight and fantastic track record, 4 out of 4 so far. And unfortunately, that's it. Next week, I'm being told it is going to be a crunch time because we're going to be holding our hustings, our politicians to account and raising questions to our politicians, putting questions to our politicians about the upcoming election. So if you haven't heard, get in touch. The social media messages should be out there. Next week is going to be a very key hour, 2-hour broadcast live from Down the Road, and it's going to be a live hustings of MPs. Get involved, get in here. We're going to have a live audience, live question and answer session. See me here next week. Until then, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. We stream our daily broadcast on inspirefm.org. You'll find all our daily updates on our social media at Inspire FM Luton.